Hello everybody, welcome to the benefits of an employee survey. We're going to give you a business guide today to setting up and running a survey. So Rihanna, question for you. Why would a company want to do a business survey?
For me, I think it would be good for a company to do a business survey because it tests the temperature in the business, as I call it. So it's more in terms of, are employees happy?
Mm-hmm.
Do employees feel that they are listened to? Do employees feel that their opinions are taken into consideration? Would they want to stay with the organization? And I think for me the temperature comes in when we look at what is it that makes employees unhappy and what can we do to change. So that's how employee survey helps you.
That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
What occurs to me, so thinking about the survey, what sort of surveys are there? So I'm thinking online, is there an alternative to online? So what sort of surveys might a company carry out?
So when they do employment surveys, you can do it anonymously.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's valuable by doing it anonymously because people would share more openly in terms of their feelings. And also, when you do it anonymously, it helps if it's a bigger group that you have, because if it's a small group, it's also very much more easy to identify people within departments or functions.
Mm-hmm.
And an easy way to do it would be to do it online. So you've got, for example, Prosper for People, for example. Let's say it was our company,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a group of employees we want to do employee survey with.
Yeah.
We can then draw up a survey, and then things like SurveyMonkey, we can then go onto SurveyMonkey and then input the questions on SurveyMonkey and then send that out to employees to complete, and then get your information back, and then look at the information and look at what it tells you from what you get back.
Okay, so a smaller company would perhaps use SurveyMonkey, but I think for the larger companies there's probably specialists that will actually set up a survey and run it for you. Would that be correct?
That could be correct. You can also go to people who do this on a basis where they just look at retention programs and motivation programs.
Mm-hmm.
And they will help you actually develop the questionnaire, looking at also in terms of what are the objectives you want to get out of a survey, because that's quite important. And then they will be actually the ones that send out the questionnaire to the employees, and then that will come back to them. And in that way, it will still be kept anonymous from the company, because they will keep the information confidential.
And they also have the ability to slice and dice the data and do
Exactly.
graphs and all sorts of things that make it more
Yeah.
meaningful.
So they will be the ones that will evaluate the information.
Okay. What if you're a much smaller organisation and it's not going to be anonymous even if it's online because the organisation is just too small? I mean, I'm sure it's still really important to get employee feedback. So how might you manage it then?
So one of the companies I worked for, what they did was they started out with focus groups.
Oh, okay.
So you had your different functions, HR, operations, finance, engineering in this case. We also had procurement. We also had business development. And it was then done on a monthly basis.
Yep.
And individuals from each function, one or two, depending on the size of the function, were then asked, would you like to partake in the focus group? And there would then be a theme set for that month for the focus group to sit down and talk about what the issues were. In that instance, the CEO would be part of the focus group, so they could give feedback to him, but the CEO was briefed before the time to say, sit there with an open mind, take in the information, and this is not a session to defend. It's just to listen to what employees are telling you up front.
Okay.
Then he would go back with that information to his ExCo meetings, discuss it with the ExCo team, and look at what's valid, what's not valid, and what are we going to do about this. And then give feedback at the next meeting in terms of the points raised. Can we do this or can't we do this? And so each month, different themes, different people at the focus group.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives you some options of what sort of surveys you can do that will right size it for different organisations.
Yeah.
So the second thing that occurs to me is, who would you actually ask to do the survey? Would it be at all levels of the organisation, or would it just be set at one level?
No. It should actually be at all levels in the organisation. It's quite important that when you measure the temperature or gauge the temperature in the organisation, is done for the organisation as a whole. What you have to keep in mind as well is that managers are employees of the organisation.
Mm-hmm.
And so they could be having similar frustrations that we as employees are having. They just don't voice it because they are at a certain level in the organisation. So it's quite important that all levels in the organisation gets an opportunity to complete the survey.
Okay. Makes sense. And is there a preferred time of year or time of month that you would carry out a survey?
Yes, don't do it after you've issued performance bonuses. Everybody will gripe about we didn't get a good performance bonus, and that will skew how your questionnaire is going to look like in terms of the feedback. Also, don't do it shortly after performance reviews.
Okay. Is there an ideal time when you
An
do
ideal
it?
time would be, I mean, it depends on the organisation what's right for you. And you would gauge in the organisation when the time would be best, because each organisation runs, let's say, performance reviews and performance bonus allocations during different times in the year.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of organisations I've worked in, we did it twice a year. So we did it within the first quarter of the year, and we did it in the last quarter of the year. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason we did it that way was, in the first quarter, we have one benchmark in terms of this is how employees felt.
Mm-hmm.
These were the issues. These are the things they were happy about. Because it's not only about the issues, it's about also what are we doing well and how can we improve upon that. And what would then happen is that the one that we had at the end of the year would be a measurement of, did we improve upon the last survey that we did? Because
Mm-hmm.
you're actually looking to improve. What's also quite good is that you can slice and dice it, and if your organization is big enough, you can slice it and dice it per function.
Okay.
As well.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see which functions are outperforming other functions in terms of retention and engagement.
Sure.
See what they are doing well and how you can implement it.
Oh, okay.
So different benchmarks that you can look at. But yes, in a couple of organizations, beginning of the year and the end of the year, so the first quarter of the year and the last quarter of the year,
Mm-hmm.
just to be able to measure that yes, we are making an improvement. It doesn't have to be that way. You can decide, let's do one now at the beginning of the year, and you can do one again the following year at the
Yeah.
beginning of the year. It just depends on the size of the organization and
Yeah.
when it's right for you to do that.
And of course, as you start doing them regularly, and that's the important thing as
Mhm.
well, I guess, to once you start doing them, to do them at least once a year, or the organisation you were
Mhm.
talking about, you were
Mhm.
doing it twice a year,
Mhm.
is to actually be able to look at trends over time as well.
Exactly.
So you
Yeah.
keep the same timing and you do them year on year.
Yes. And it's quite important to keep it to more or less the same timing, because certain things happen within the organization,
Mhm.
as I mentioned, that will influence your survey. If you're going to go out and again, it's not cast in stone. So if you did in the first quarter of the year, but you know there's going to be restructuring happening in the first quarter of the year, you might decide, you know what, we're not doing an employee survey now because we're going out with bad news.
Mm-hmm.
And you might decide, let's leave it then only for the last quarter of the year and let's do it then.
Although even if you're restructuring, if you slanted the questions towards that particular event, couldn't you also get some valuable feedback about the restructuring and how people are feeling and that sort of thing? Or would that be a bad idea?
It wouldn't be a bad idea. It would be a good idea. I would then, personally, I would put it in as a different section in the questionnaire. Reason being that if you're going to look at in terms of how can you look at changing things and whether you're making improvement, you need to measure against something. So it needs to be against the same set of questions that you asked previously.
Okay. Yeah.
Otherwise,
I understand.
You don't have a benchmark or a standard.
Oh, okay. Otherwise, it's just in isolation.
Yes, just in isolation.
And then it wouldn't actually be such an important value add. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I guess the question on everybody's mind is going to be, well, what do we actually put in the survey? What sort of topics do we cover and ask questions about?
Good question, Alison. And I actually went to print off one that I helped an organisation put together quite recently. So you need to identify, as I mentioned earlier on, what's the objective of the survey and what do you want to measure. It's no use going out there and just doing a survey and thinking, let's just see what information it gives us. Because you will then not actually have a plan, and you will not have a roadmap in terms of what to do with that information. So do the prep work beforehand and identify what is it that we actually want to achieve with the survey. Things you can look at in terms of headlines, as I call it, would be the environment. So that would be the environment people work within. The workplace and resources. So how happy are they within their function, and do they have the resources to be able to do their job? Work or job satisfaction. Again, how happy am I within my role? Do I get accountability? Can I take responsibility? Am I empowered? Management. This is a topic that will always come up in any employee survey, and this would be in terms of does my manager treat me with fairness and respect? Does my manager give me the accountability in my work? Is my manager a good leader, etc. From that perspective. Communication would be communication throughout the whole organization. Do they communicate what the company's vision, mission and values are? Do they communicate, for example, if there are important changes happening in the organization? Do we know about it? When do we get to know about it? So communication covers aspects from that. Benefits and reward, another sensitive topic. So this would be, are you happy with the benefits you're receiving in the organization? And this they could break down into the pension that they get, whether there's a work-life balance, whether they think the medical aid covers what needs to be covered, etc. from that perspective. So it's looking at each heading or headline, as I call it, and then developing questions under those headlines to see what you want to measure. And then from there use that feedback to see what needs to be improved. So for example, if you look at communication and people say, but we are not being communicated to on a regular basis, we would like information as and when things happen, then you need to go sit down and say, what are we doing not good around communication and how can we improve that? Do we need a communication plan in place? Do we need a communication strategy? So listen to the feedback that they give you and then go work out things that you can do to improve it. When you do your next survey, you'd go look at communication and see whether that has improved from the feedback that they gave you the last time.
And you, of course, as an HR specialist, if a company needed help actually setting up an employee survey and interpreting the results, you would be able to help them, wouldn't you?
Yes, so I'm able to do that. As I said, this employee engagement survey, I helped an organization pull together. We looked at in terms of why would they want to do the survey, for what reason, what would the objective be, what are they going to be doing with the information, and I think we'll be discussing that in another discussion that we have coming up shortly. But that's quite important, and we'll go more into detail during that discussion. But if you do a survey, you need to do something with the information. Otherwise, employees will not take the next survey seriously.
Absolutely. So if people wanted to ask you a question, they could post in this group.
They could post in this
in
group.
the Prosper Through People, or they could also go to your Constantia Consulting website as well if they wanted to contact you
exactly
directly.
Yeah, and then join us in our closed group as well.
Absolutely.
Ask a question there, because I might come up with an answer from my point of view in terms of the work I've done with organizations, but there are people in the group that might have a different point of view, and I think it's good to listen to what other people say and how they've applied it within their organization, because it's not one size fits all for everyone.
Of course.
And you've got to look at, is the time right? When can I do it? The length of the survey as well, because you don't want people to get bored. So find out what other people did. How long have they kept the survey? You know, or is it short? Can we keep it short enough but still get the information that we want? So drop your questions into our groups. That would be really good to hear what other people also have to say and their feedback with surveys, whether they've experienced it to be positive or negative, and the reasons for those.
So that's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour around, if you're just doing your initial thinking about setting up an employee survey. Hopefully that's given you some ideas. And as Ariana mentioned, the next step is to think about, okay, well, I've designed the survey, I've done it, I've got all the feedback, what next? And we'll be covering that in our next Facebook Live on the 9th of October.
Yeah, exciting, because then we can go more into detail.
Absolutely.
I've got the information, what do I do with the information now?
Absolutely. And as you said, it is so, so important that it's not just getting that information, it's doing something with it afterwards. And so we'll be talking through that next time. Yeah. I think that's it for this week.
Yes, that's it for this week. I hope you found the information we provided to you useful. Yes, as Alison has said, it's been a whistle stop, quite quick. But there is so much more we can talk about the topic. However, we will go into detail next week and provide further information with regard to that. In the meantime, any questions, drop it into the group and we will try and answer there, otherwise followed up next week as well. So thank you from our side.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Okay. Bye. Bye.